What's up, guys? Good morning. I'm Jesse Cofield. We have a great show for you today. Coming your way, here's what you have to look forward to on GoJo and Golic. Tim Kurkjian going to join us to sing the national anthem. Just kidding. He is going to talk about last night, though, and the rest of the baseball season. And we're in the game. Gojo and Matt Brown going to talk CFB 25. Tell us all the nuances of the game. I know that Gojo's been up all night playing the game. And then Christian Winfield going to join us to talk Knicks. Going to talk Brunson, his deal, all that and more to look forward to on today's show.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr. and Jesse Cofield here today. We got a great show for everybody. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review us. Leave us a 5-star rating and check us out here live Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. And we got no Dad today. Dad trying to make his way home from Lake Tahoe still, and travel woes have befallen him, unfortunately. Everybody in the Midwest, by the way, stay safe. I mean, Dad was supposed to fly through Chicago, and I saw a bunch of scary weather out there, tornadoes touching down on the ground, planes left on the runway. I got friends in South Bend, and obviously my parents dealing with tornado warnings. So everyone out there, stay very safe. Dad is safe, I'm sure, in the confines of some Las Vegas airport hotel, having gambled away most of my inheritance last night. So he's going to take a quick seat today while he gets back on track with that. And in the meantime, we are going to go guest-a-palooza on this one today, along with me and Jesse, which is going to be very, very fun. So we've got, as she mentioned, Christian Winfield coming on with us here. We've got Tim Kurkjian coming on with us today. Matt Brown from the Extra Points newsletter also going to join us here coming up in the show to talk about the video game last night. Because, Jesse, I have already been bitten by the bug, is probably selling it a bit short for the way that I'm playing this game. I may have to have people. You remember when Deion Sanders got to Colorado? I think this was Colorado, could have been Jackson State, and got into it with reporters for not addressing him as coach the way they would have in his mind, Nick Saban or any of these other coaching elites that have been in the sport. I almost advocated for people in my life to start calling me coach yesterday. That's how bought into this I've been so far.
What I want to know is, so you're in California. So what time did you get access to the game? Your time?
1:00 p.m. Pacific.
Okay, so how long? So 1 o'clock, you get access. You're immediately on, right? And so what time did you stop playing the game last night? You didn't. You're playing right now.
I would say I literally have the console open right now. I'm staring at, actually, like, my PS5 is 5 feet from me right now. So staring at it this whole show like a moth to the literal flame is going to be a real test of my abilities to concentrate, which is why, again, we're bringing in help here. So Tim Kurkjian, Matt Brown will come by to digest the video game here. We've also got our guys, Julian, Edlow, Steve Buchanan, to come by, talk a little NFL, a little Major League Baseball, as we've got some more best ball position breakdowns. Today we're going wide receivers for everybody looking to score this upcoming fantasy season. We've got plenty of looks at the rankings there, our top fives. That'll be a great time. So we're looking forward to all of them coming through here. But Jesse, we got to talk about this national anthem from last night. Like, yeah, the home run derby is great. Teoscar Hernandez won. First time you had a Dodgers player win it. Obviously huge for them because they need something good to happen this season because nothing has happened and gone well so far for their club. But this national anthem rocked our world from the jump last night in a way that I don't know how we recover from here. For anyone that missed it, Ingrid Andress, who apparently has been nominated for 4 Grammys. Got up last night. 4 Grammys. I think that was the part that threw everybody off. So this woman gets up last night to sing what will now be the national anthem that I think, for you, Jesse, did this eclipse what we saw from Fergie at NBA All-Star Weekend years ago? I mean, that had to be 2016 when Fergie, Let's Play Some Basketball, entered into the lexicon forever. Does this, in your mind, jump over that one? Because honestly, the Let's Play Some Basketball, like, Fergie had a couple of cheeky moments of kind of leaning into it that now in hindsight seem endearing compared to whatever we saw last night.
So the reason it doesn't for me is because the thinly veiled player reactions to Fergie's rendition was so good that I just think that will live in infamy forever. We didn't get quite the panning to player reactions during this one that we did in that NBA All-Star one when Fergie was singing. But I will say, you're absolutely right. In retrospect, the fact that Fergie was kind of like, in a tongue-in-cheek way, a little bit kind of acknowledging that she was absolutely bombing, taking the L. Like, Ingrid girl, at what point you gotta just make a joke? You gotta do a little, give us a look in the camera, like, I know what's going on. She has turned the comments off on her Instagram, by the way.
That's a smart move. Jesse, I am now completely derailed by a take that you had in our pre-show meeting that all of this could in fact be some sort of long con in the name of drumming up interest. In a day and age where virality sells, you throwing out the idea that this was done intentionally as what? She's got a new single coming out soon?
July 24th. She's releasing her new single. And she's got like a tour coming up, I think. So
what better way to go out and do this than to intentionally bomb the national anthem at the MLB All-Star Game?
This is going to ruin the tour. Producer Drew just got in my ear. This is going to ruin the tour. I mean,
this is going to ruin the tour.
Had to throw it out there. But the question is it really, because going viral for being bad at singing is maybe not the best way to sell tickets to your tour, is it?
Probably not, but like maybe morbid curiosity is enough to see, all right, clearly she was not, like now I would never have known when her single came out that this woman was nominated for 4 Grammys. Now, the reaction should be questioning the Grammy voters of America. We'll have to get Jason Fitz on here at some point, since he reminds us all the time he is a Grammy voter, and ask how this happens. But it also might prompt some people to look at this and go, well, maybe, just maybe, there's something under the hood here, and we can peek at that. So that was what kickstarted the night. I was a little late to the party on the anthem, and my phone just started blowing up with conversation around that. I'm going to be honest, Jesse, for the rest of the home run derby itself, especially with some of the new rules. We talk about how they kind of tweak the rules every year for the home run derby, and this year the new rules were, instead of just having a timer on your rounds, there was also a pitch count. It was you either got to X amount of time or X amount of pitches in each round as sort of the stopping point. Sort of made the first couple of rounds a little bit of a snooze. I had a really hard time getting in to the first little bit of it. Obviously, down towards the end, you had Teoscar Hernandez and I think Alec Bohm having to go into a swing off when they were tied in the semifinal round. Alec Bohm when they were tied in the semifinal round. So that got a little bit exciting there. They really started to get into that groove. You could tell it took guys a little while to get into all this. And so some of that was exciting towards the end, but ultimately, this was one of those years where, as we're seeing quotes about Shohei Ohtani and his openness to doing in the future, this really did sort of feel like one of the years where we would have benefited from a bit more of the big brand name star power in this, or at the very least going back to the format from the last couple of years. I understand it wore guys down, but this one for some reason just seemed to rob it of any of the interest in the other rounds. Did any of this grab your attention?
Absolutely not. No, I found it incredibly boring and I turned it off. I did turn it off. I also felt really bad for Pete Alonso. Did you just feel bad for him? Because he takes this so seriously. Some of these other dudes are out there just like having a good time, like, you know, drinking out of glass mason jars, just chilling. And Pete Alonso treats this like Game 7 of the World Series. And he finished second to last. Like, he just did so bad. Got eliminated, had like the fewest home runs. Who had a worse night? Was it him or the national anthem singer Ingrid?
I think it's got to be Pete Alonso, just because we didn't know Ingrid, most of us, I think, until right before this started. Pete Alonso, like you said, walked into this with the bullseye on his back. When you make this your thing, and then you go out and, you know, doing deadlifts in the dugout and all the things that we've seen from the polar bear over the years, and then you come out and you do this, I have a feeling that makes it a worse night for you there. Now, again, his performance overall not as bad as Ingrid's, but when it's your thing and you come out and fail like this, that goes a long way. So yeah, unfortunately it felt like, and we'll see, Timmy Kurkjian's going to join us here, like we mentioned, in a few minutes. I'll be interested to see his read on a lot of this. As the man who loves baseball more than pretty much anything on this earth, if it registered on the Richter scale with even the diehards last night.
Okay, but so after what we saw this year, are we going to have another change again next year? Because it's like every year they're like, we're tweaking the rules. Here we go again.
Well, yeah, I think ultimately what it reminds you is there's only so much tweaking you can do unless you get an incredible product in the middle. Like, unless you get what we got in that semifinal where you've got a swing off and you've got a tightly contested race, you can only do so much to manufacture that. And I think Major League Baseball, it's all well-intentioned with this, but they're running into the same problem with a lot of the All-Star Game festivities. Is we've got an attention span problem and a problem where we've seen everything too much already to be all that impressed by it, which is why getting something new can usually help that. And I think that's why for the actual MLB All-Star Game itself tonight, we've got, at the very least, a very interesting opening stanza to this that should capture a bunch of attention, because Major League Baseball, to the point about the home run derby for the All-Star Game, has been handed their golden goose, Paul Skeens, and what he has represented in terms of the interest of the casual fan. Much like we talk about the long ball, there are a few things as exciting as watching a pitcher go out there and throw gas. And if you do it with a mustache, well, baby, that's just a bonus point. And so now we're working on the All-Star Game tonight, where, again, Paul Skeens going to get the start for the National League side there. I know there was some discrepancy about that, where people had thought, based on merit alone, this might not be the guy who should be starting for you, which, even amidst the sea of the honor of the All-Star Game, still carries a distinction all its own. Paul Skeens getting the chance to go out there and fan this lineup early on is the right move, because, again, he's the draw right now. He's the easy thing for us to all throw out on the national level of a question anytime we got a baseball person on, because everyone knows the guy that was the top pick in the draft, the guy that was a part of the national championship team, the guy that's dating Livy Dunn, and the guy that goes out there and, since he got called up to the majors, has been an instant impact at the big league level. And so now we get to go into tonight where, yeah, it could be short-lived. This is Torey Lovullo, the manager for their side, talking about how long we can expect to see Paul Skeens out there. And spoiler alert, it's not very long.
Torey, if Paul happens to have a quick first inning tomorrow, is there a chance that we can see him out there for the second inning?
Most likely, no. We have 11, 12 pitchers to get through, and going back to what I just said, I want to make sure that we're fair to everybody and give them a chance to go out there and compete. So Brent Strom is working on that right now downstairs, and that's probably the hardest part of being the manager, in my early opinion, is trying to get every pitcher in the game. So I would love to. I'd love to watch you for two. Actually, I'd love to tire him out enough so he can't make one of his next starts, because it'll be against the Diamondbacks, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Paul, would you like to face Aaron Judge?
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, it'd be pretty cool for us to see. So he's the most bet on MVP, despite obviously only being slated to go one inning, and Judge is batting fourth. So if Skeens goes 1, 2, 3, we're not going to see that matchup between Skeens and Judge. And Skeens is just the 5th rookie pitcher to ever earn the honor of starting in the All-Star Game. So pretty cool. Obviously, everybody can't wait to see him. Seen a lot of stuff on the internet about how he's making the mustache cool again. I feel like the mustache has been cool again for a while, but, he's out there doing the Lord's work with the mustache.
No, mustache culture is an important part of society, and I'm glad that he's doing that in a way that pops with the new generation. Mentioned, just 21 years old, 11 starts for him is the fewest for an all-star this year, and he's just the 5th rookie starter, as you mentioned. So some of those things that kind of flagged for certain people, but at the end of the day, I applaud Major League Baseball for understanding what they've got. We've talked about this a little bit in other sports here with Caitlin Clark and the U.S. Olympic team and all these different areas where the idea of entertainment starts to merge with the idea of merit, and you're looking to strike that balance in each of these spots. And I think Team USA with Caitlin Clark is an obvious spot where it should be solely based on merit. And we know for the WNBA Olympic roster, there has been plenty of conversation about how that's not always been the case in the past for very different reasons. That's been a team that's been very political inside the world of women's basketball. But here with Major League Baseball's All-Star Game, especially once we did away with that silly notion of deciding home field advantage for the World Series in this game, and it truly became an exhibition, leading with your best punch right now, not a bad way to go. And man, listen, we're all hoping and praying that we get one hit at least in the beginning of this, because seeing him go up against the best hitter in the game right now in Aaron Judge would be an incredible moment. Those are the things when people talk about why these all-star games maintain any importance in the modern era, because we've talked all the time, whether it's trying to fix them, whether it's trying to do away with the Pro Bowl like we have in the NFL, about why we even still do this in a day and age where across all these sports, you've got some variation of interleague play, out-of-conference games, ways for star players that didn't traditionally in the olden days see each other consistently enough that made these all-star games super valuable. It's still the idea in a sport, especially like Major League Baseball, where you're not guaranteed, even within the body of one game, the matchup of best on best in a critical moment, to be able to actually manufacture it here with Skeens and Aaron Judge in a place where more eyeballs are going to see it. That's an opportunity you need to take in this, Jesse, and I think Major League Baseball understood the assignment.
So what is more impressive? Paul Skeens, 21, only the 5th rookie ever to get the start in the All-Star game, or AL starter Corbin Burns coming out here and doing this after his wife gave birth to twin daughters less than a month ago. So we got that new dad power versus that, 21-year-old coming out here throwing fire. I don't know what's more impressive. I think probably, I'm going to be honest, twin girls less than a month ago, it seems like a pretty heavy lift.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'll be more impressed by Corbin Burns going out here and doing this. And you mentioned that, him getting the start on that side for the National League. It's gonna be really the American League. Sorry, he's the National League Cy Young winner prior to that. But no, that the Twins is far more impressive, Jesse. That was, I think, now that I've got so many friends that are parents themselves and watching what it takes to get through those first few months, you could speak to that better than anybody right now. Being able to go out there, I do worry that's going to mitigate the dad strength early on, though. I feel like the dad strength is a power that sets into you once the sleep returns. And for Paul Skeens, he don't have to worry about missing any sleep unless it's because he wants to go out and do the other things that 21-year-olds do. So I'm going to err on the side of Skeens on this one, even if Corbin Burns, who, again, has been incredible so far this season, and congrats on the new Twins, that's going to be a tough one to overcome, I think, because boy, sleep is just so important as someone that was recently jet lagged and is.
I bet they have a night nurse. I don't think
that is true.
Corbin Burns is like showing up to work like, oh, I'm exhausted. Been up with the babies all night. They're like, what are you doing, man? You can't do that.
Bro, you've got money, and we need you to go out here and ball out.
Yeah.
You need to fix this problem right now. Just like I am going to have to fix the problem at some point during this show. We might just stream me playing EA Sports College Football 25 for the second hour.
You're staring at it.
I just keep catching flashes of it right now, and I keep thinking about how my recruits, for anyone that's unaware, I am the offensive coordinator, Rock Hoover. Shout out to Mark Schlereth's character on Guiding Light from back in the day. That's been my fake name for the rest of time since then. I am offensive coordinator Rock Hoover. I am the offensive coordinator at the University of Texas San Antonio, UTSA, the Roadrunners, meep. And we are currently 3-1 on the year, with a blowout loss to Texas being the only mark on it, which was a humbling reminder of where our program is currently, but I think gives our guys something to strive for right now. We almost let one loss become two, with a home loss after that to an FCS program, which can't happen again. We're recentered now, Jesse. We're refocused. We're going to get back to the things that make us, a strong ground game, a defense that attacks, blitzes, and plays downhill and tries to dictate the tempo to the opponent. And hopefully that will get us back on track, because I don't know if you heard, we're in the American now, so we've got to go out here and really show out in what's become a very competitive conference at the Group of 5 level.
You're just like all the MLB players who have said that their plans during All-Star break is just to play this game. Just stay up, play the game. They're going to return from the break not well rested, not having gotten a lot of sleep, but like bleary-eyed and just like straggling in, like, but we're doing so. My team, I'm bringing them to glory, just like you.
See, you know what? And if they're all on the same page, that means no one's going to have the advantage. So thank you to EA Sports College Football 25 for weakening Major League Baseball for the second half of the season. Coming up next, we'll get stronger with Tim Kurkjian and find out what the biggest storylines heading into baseball's second half are next. Welcome back to Gojo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr. and Jesse Cofield here. Hopefully Dad making his way safely back home after some travel mishaps yesterday. Someone who is firmly planted and where we need him to be this morning, though, our friend Tim Kurkjian, kind enough to join us here to talk about the Home Run Derby, the upcoming Major League Baseball All-Star Game in the second half of the season. Tim, ESPN MLB analyst, and the co-host along with his son of the Is This a Great Game or What podcast that you guys can certainly check out as well. And Tim, I have to imagine, I mean, you're a guy that every time I used to see you around work, every time you got a chance to talk baseball, the happiest man on earth. Major League Baseball All-Star Weekend, is this one of your favorite weekends of the year?
Yes, I've been to every All-Star game since 1981. It is a tremendous celebration of the game. It's really the 1 week that baseball has the landscape to itself. And it is so great this year because, Mike, the talent that we're seeing right now, the young, strong, fast, incredibly skilled talent is amazing. I mean, when you look at Bobby Witt Jr. and Gunnar Henderson and Ellie De La Cruz, all shortstops, and then you look at Mason Miller and, of course, Paul Skeens, who's starting the All-Star game tonight. This is the next wave of great young players that we're going to see capture the All-Star game for the next 10 years. And in a couple years from now, there's going to be another wave of great young players. The game is in a really good spot if you're really watching right now, because these guys just overpower the sport with their physical gifts, and it is breathtaking to watch.
You mentioned Paul Skeens. Seems like he's been the headliner of that group of young players, certainly right now, bursting onto the scene the way he has. I know there was some debate about whether or not him getting the start for the All-Star game, just based on how small the body of work is right now, was any issue. Did you have any problem with that, Tim?
No, I thought it was the right thing to do, because he is, again, the future of the game. If you want to watch one pitcher today, he's the guy you want to watch. But I think he deserved it. I mean, he's only made 11 starts, but he's the only pitcher in Major League history to have 89 strikeouts through 11 starts with an ERA under 2 in the history of the sport. He's 6'6", 250. He throws 102 miles an hour with elite command. This is what the All-Star game was built for. So we get to watch Paul Skeens face Aaron Judge in the first inning of the All-Star game. This is an exhibition game, but it's all about confrontations, and this is exactly what we want to see. The pitcher who's going to carry this game for the next 10 years facing just a ridiculously good American League lineup.
You mentioned that's the matchup, and he got asked about it in the press conference the other day, and certainly most people have their eyes on there. For you, Tim, outside of that, you just mentioned it's a treasure trove of names in this game. If you've got a couple of casual fans maybe tuning in, checking this out, and there's some guys they maybe haven't seen, who's someone that outside of the couple of guys we mentioned there, you're most excited to see in this game, or that fans should be most excited to see getting a chance out here in this particular setting?
Yeah, it's hard to take your eyes off of Ellie De La Cruz. Mike, he's 6'5". He's got tremendous power from both sides of the plate, and he might be the fastest player in the league. When you combine that skill set, that athleticism, with that age, I mean, this is why baseball is in such a great spot, because guys like him, you can't wait to see him go first to third. You can't wait to see him come to the plate. But there's so many people like him. I mean, Bobby Witt Jr.'s athleticism is just staggering, as is Gunnar Henderson's, but they're everywhere. And they're coming every year now, more and more. And I can't watch a game. I have to watch Ellie De La Cruz move, because I've never seen a player that big move quite like he does.
Yeah, it really is otherworldly. We had the debate a while back about, players switching sport and who would do better and what. And I'm pretty sure Ellie De La Cruz could do whatever he wanted in whatever sport he chose with the kind of tools that guy has. And Major League Baseball, certainly better for having him around. We know we had the MLB draft going on the other night, Tim. You mentioned all these young players. Is there anyone in this draft that has a chance of popping as early as we've seen some of these other players right now? Obviously, Paul Skeens a bit of an outlier with how quickly he's come in and dominated like this. But was there anyone that we saw taken the other night that has a chance to come in and contribute this early?
Yeah, I think Charlie Condon, he's the Georgia outfielder / third baseman who went number 3 to the Rockies. I think he has a chance to play in the big leagues like early next season. Mike, the lesson here is that these college players are way more ready than they've ever been and they get to the big leagues quicker because they're so big, so fast, and so strong. That kid's power is ridiculous, and we're going to see it in Colorado where the ball tends to travel. We didn't have a high school player drafted until the number 9 pick, Connor Griffin. And back when I used to cover early on, Mike, there were high school kids taken all the time. Now teams are looking at these college players and say, this guy can help us almost right away. I mean, people will tell you that Paul Skeens was ready to pitch in the major leagues last year as a college senior. That almost never has happened in baseball history, but it's happening more and more now because these guys are just so physically gifted.
It really is something else. And like you said, it's got the game in an incredible place. So, Tim, obviously tonight's going to be a ton of fun. Everyone's looking forward to all that, but we've got a lot of baseball to play after this. So looking towards the home stretch of the season for you, what in your mind is the biggest storyline that you're going to be paying attention to once we depart All-Star Weekend?
Right. Well, once we leave the All-Star game, we get to the trade deadline, and it's going to be fascinating as always. And what interests me the most is that the Yankees are really good, and they're going to the playoffs, but they're in a bad spot right now, and they have to go do something at the trade deadline, and they have the money and the resources to do whatever they want. But I think they need another starting pitcher, and they may need some offensive help also. And then there are the Dodgers, who are another really good team that's going to win the division and go to the playoffs. There's no doubt, but their starting pitching is in a bit of a mess right now. We're not sure when Clayton Kershaw is going to come back, or Walker Buehler, and we're not sure what they're going to look like when they come back. And Yoshi Yamamoto, he's just now starting to play catch. He probably won't be back until September. And their lineup needs a little bit of help, at least in the batting at the back end of the batting order. So these two really good teams are going to be very active, I think, at the trade deadline. And the problem is there are only a few teams out there at the moment that are sellers, the Marlins and the White Sox and a few others. But to me, that will tell where the game is going for the rest of the season, what happens at the trade deadline with two really big teams, Yankees and Dodgers.
Tim, only about a minute left here, but with the Yankees specifically, Juan Soto got a bunch of questions about his future the other day at the podium here. How much does what happens in the Yankees postseason run specifically going to weigh in on Juan Soto's future potentially in pinstripes or not as he approaches a big payday this offseason?
Right. And that's why the next 2 weeks and the next 2 months are so important for the Yankees, because the more games they win, the further they go in the playoffs, I believe the better chance they have to sign Juan Soto long term. Let's say they go to the World Series or win the World Series and he gets caught up in that. I think that has to help them get him re-signed after this season. So, this is such an important time for the Yankees, not just to win and go to the World Series, but do whatever it takes to keep that guy in town for years and years to come.
Couldn't agree more, and I'm sure everybody in the Bronx feels the same way. Tim, it's always a pleasure having you around here. Thank you so much. Hope you get to enjoy the All-Star game tonight and the back half of a really exciting Major League Baseball season.
Thank you, Mike, and say hi to your dad for me.
Absolutely. Will do, Tim. Thank you. Tim Kurkjian, ESPN MLB analyst. And again, is this a great game or what? The podcast with his son. You guys can check out there. Always fantastic stuff there. Coming up next, as we look ahead, we got training camps coming up here in a little over a week. For some teams, the reporting is going to happen soon, and that means we got to start to get you ready. Best Ball on DraftKings is coming up. We will explain exactly why you're going to want to get involved in that, and which wideouts are primed for a big upcoming season in the NFL. Our buddy Steve Buchanan going to stop by and help us break all of that down next here on GoJo and Golic.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Rookies will be reporting to training camp this week, so a lot of football preview is going to be coming your way. We're going to break it down from every angle, including how you could win a few best ball leagues on DraftKings. So if you haven't played best ball on DraftKings, it's like getting rid of the worst things that you hate about season-long fantasy, okay? No terrible trade offers, no punch in the air because you left a guy on the bench. You don't have to worry about injuries on a weekly basis. So here's the lowdown on best ball on DraftKings. It is a 12-round snake draft. Just like regular season-long fantasy, the best parts of the draft, pick your squad, roll with it. Roster management, okay? No drops, trades, lineup switches. The top performers on your team get the points. Duration, points rank up for season as long as the contest lasts. So some are 4 weeks, others all season. So you decide on each tournament where you want to go. So now let's welcome in our friend, DraftKings Network's Steve Buchanan, for some help with our wide receiver rankings. So we're going to take a look at this, get your pick for wide receiver rankings for best ball. Steve, great to have you here.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be in the presence of you, Jesse, and Gojo. Thank you very much.
My God, stop.
No. Excited to have you here. Jesse's blushing right now. And we're ready to talk some wideouts. We did running backs yesterday. We're taking a look at all this stuff for best ball. And really, a lot of it applies to season-long fantasy. A lot of it applies to just football in general with the guys that we're looking at on this list. Although, Steve, I think for both of us and for most people looking out in the world of fantasy, the conversation around who's the best wide receiver in the NFL seems to right now be Justin Jefferson off in a little box until further notice. But we know the Minnesota Vikings going through a ton of changes in important positions here. So as we look at this upcoming season for best ball, for fantasy, for everything else, who's the receiver that actually is going to be coming off people's draft boards first this year?
Yeah, I think 1 and 2 is fairly obvious. It's the receivers after that where it really gets a little dicey. But CeeDee Lamb for me is probably the guy who should be going off the board first when it comes to receivers. I mean, since the Cowboys released Amari Cooper back in 2022, I mean, Lamb has been the dominated guy in this offense. 29% target share since Cooper has been gone, averaging over 10 targets per game over, a couple of years now. And then you have to consider what the Cowboys offense won't have this season. They no longer have Michael Gallup. They no longer have Tony Pollard, which I'm still scratching my head about. Those guys combined for 120 targets last year. And then if you look at the depth chart below Lamb, it is razor thin at this point. Brandon Cooks, please. Jaylen Tolbert, okay, that's your wide receiver 2 and wide receiver 3. Well, I think we know where all the targets are going to go to. And then look what they did at running back. They brought back Zeke. Are we kidding me? Did anybody watch Zeke with the Patriots last year? Guy can't do anything at this point, can't do anything in the red zone. So, who are we going to give the ball to when Dak Prescott needs to throw? It's obviously going to go CeeDee Lamb. Dallas only ran the ball 41% of the time last year. They're going to be throwing the ball a ton. And remember, you get those bonus points for a 100-yard receiving game, 3 extra points. Yeah, Lamb did that 8 times last season. Lamb's got to be the number 1 receiver at this point.
Yeah, I think the imbalance of that offense is really a huge factor that can tilt in this favor, like you mentioned there, because you're right. Last year was already, and we saw this really shine through, I think, from the Buffalo game on, that Dallas had a massive problem stopping the run and establishing it on the other side of the ball and breaking in a rookie left tackle in Tyler Guyton, leaving after the Hall of Famer Tyron Smith heads out of town, in addition to what they failed to do in the draft or in free agency at the running back position, is going to put a lot of that onus again on the shoulder of Dak Prescott, but certainly also on the hands of CeeDee Lamb. So you're absolutely right. Easy consensus number 1 pick there for one of the best wideouts in the game. We're assuming all the contract stuff gets settled up with him. We'll wait and see if what happens with Dak Prescott, but CeeDee Lamb is getting done. That much we know for sure. After that, number 2, you said that one's obvious here. Tyreek Hill, is that going to be the bell cow for everybody else down in Miami on an offense with 2 very paid up wide receivers?
Yes, I mean, it's got to be the guy here. I mean, he's 30 now, so like the downturn's going to come at some point, but we haven't seen like any indication that that's coming here. But he was the top 5 in almost every offensive category you want for a wide receiver last year: receptions, receiving yards, touchdowns. He was tied for first place, yards after the catch, yards per route run. Like, he was up there for almost everything. And it's not like he's in danger of losing any targets. It's him and then a complement of other like good receivers. Like, obviously Waddle's still in the mix. He's still average over 7 targets per game. But after that, it's like, Odell Beckham, a couple of the guys that they drafted. So Tyreek Hill really feels like the guy, just the speed, his athleticism, the talent on the field is just simply unmatched. Maybe calm down with his little off-field antics and everything. He's going to have like 10 kids starting kindergarten at the same time, but that has nothing to do with the on-field stuff. But he's just been going crazy on and off the field. So for me, that's the number 2 guy here. I think Tyreek Hill's got to be number 2.
It certainly, we've seen it, and with all these, I look towards healthy offenses in general and what Mike McDaniel has built there with Tua Tagovailoa and the speed to burn on the outside. They're going to put up a ton of points again. He's certainly going to be the focal point of that. Even if, like you said, starting to get up there, they've invested in Jaylen Waddle as the clear heir apparent and successor whenever that baton fully gets passed from one to the other there. The only one I would throw out here as something, Steve, I'd be curious for your opinion on would be Ja'Marr Chase, who obviously had another big season statistically last year and also is getting his quarterback back full-time in theory in Joe Burrow on an offense where, yes, T. Higgins is still going to be out there taking some of the share of targets away, albeit on a year where he's going to play it out on the franchise tag right now. He's more than likely, barring something insanely unforeseen, going to be gone at the start of next year. Is there any thought to Ja'Marr Chase being up in this range, or is he down even further for you?
So I have Chase at number 4. I mean, the Cincinnati Bengals offensive room just seems a bit crowded still. Like, Higgins is back, and we'll talk about that in a couple minutes here. Tyler Boyd is out, but they brought in Jermaine Burton, who's a big downfield threat for them. And like Chase, if you notice too, Chase is running a lot of more shorter routes than he did back in his rookie year. If you look at like his average distance of target, it was 13 in his rookie year. It was down to 9.1 last season. Now, to be fair, this was, of course, a mix of Joe Burrow and Jake Browning at quarterback here, and he is still a big time threat. He had over 100 receiving yards 5 times last year, at least 10 catches 4 times. But the touchdown regression was pretty, eye-opening last year. Only had 7 last year, and 3 of them came in that one game against Arizona back in week 5. So I think there's actually one receiver that I would have in front of him here. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say Chase is in a bad spot or Chase is going to have a bad year. But when you look at who I have at number 3 here, which is Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think St. Brown is in a much better spot here overall.
St. Brown, especially in an offense that, like you said, while certainly out of the backfield that they've invested is going to have some guys that they're getting the ball to and is certainly a dedicated group to the run, you believe for him in Goff, there really aren't a lot of other targets there to take away from the focal point that he's been for that offense.
I mean, that really has a lot to do with it. Like, if we remember back in week 13 of 2021, where he really started to become the de facto wide receiver 1, people were like, oh, well, this is only by default. This is not really the talent that he has because that's the only guy that they have to throw to. And it was a question if he could replicate that the next year. And he did. The next season, 106 catches for 1,100 yards and 6 touchdowns. Then he really entered into elite status last year, 141 catches, just under 1,800 receiving yards, and 11 touchdowns. Like, I don't think we give Jared Goff enough praise as a passer. He still has that, elite offensive line in front of him to protect him, because that is when Jared Goff is at his best. When he has a clean pocket. Last year, he completed 76% of his pass attempts and 8.3 yards per attempt in that scenario. You look at St. Brown, second amongst receivers with 141 catches, as I mentioned, 4th most red zone targets in the league amongst all wide receivers with 24, made 16 catches in that scenario. There are a lot of things to like about St. Brown, and that's why I have him over Ja'Marr Chase, just because I think the opportunities are going to continue to funnel to him. So that's why St. Brown I have him over Ja'Marr Chase.
Listen, for Jared Goff and for that Detroit offense, that, you're right, is his superpower, is clean pocket and throwing play action over the middle. Everywhere else in the field, if you ask Jared Goff to move his feet, if you ask him to throw outside the numbers too much, great. But if you want him to throw deep over the middle, especially to Amon-Ra St. Brown, the guy can fit it through a keyhole and can do so fearlessly. Yep. It's wild looking at any list of wide receivers and seeing Justin Jefferson down around 5, but I can understand it given what we mentioned, the fact that you're either going to be going from Sam Darnold to a rookie quarterback or starting with a rookie quarterback altogether in an offense that's going to undergo some changes for there. You obviously saw him eclipse a grand last year with 4 quarterbacks, but that can only go so far through some of the changes that we've got there. So, Steve getting you guys right for what we're got coming up this NFL season, the wide receiver market for best ball. Coming up next, we'll get his opinion on the all-important MLB All-Star Game national anthem that rocked everyone's world last night, and a little bit of rest of the Major League Baseball world next. All right, welcome back to Gojo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Jesse Cofield, Steve Buchanan joining us here, talking a little wide receivers, talking some baseball today. We just finished up Steve's top 5 wide receivers heading into DraftKings best ball season, fantasy season coming up here in the fall. Steve, one wide receiver we didn't get to, although we did talk about in the context of Jamar Chase, was T. Higgins, who occupies some rare air this offseason in the NFL. We came and went past Monday's deadline for players on the franchise tag to agree to a long-term deal with their squad. And it came and went just like that for T. Higgins. He, of the 8 players who were franchise tagged back in March, becomes the only one not to receive a long-term extension. Now, some got traded while they were on the tag. Others received that long-term deal. But he now hits that mark, and because of the way the NFL CBA set up, now he can't sign that long-term extension until after the final game of the regular season. So he's going to play it out on the franchise tag this year. One more round. And Steve, how much more does that ratchet up the intensity for this Cincinnati Bengals offense specifically, with Joe Burrow coming back off yet another injury in a year where, yeah, they've tried to go and rebuild this offensive line, continue to add parts and depth to that, but the wide receiver group that's been the sell for this team since they drafted Joe Burrow now seems to be in its final year in this current form.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with the move too. I mean, if you really look at Higgins' numbers across the board, like, he's been going down over the past couple of years. I really feel like he peaked in that 2021 season at 1,400 receiving yards that year, 92 catches. And then you look at, after that, 223-yard difference and had 5 less catches. T. Higgins is a nice compliment to whatever is the top wide receiver in this Bengals offense. But, like I mentioned in the last segment, they drafted Burton, who's a big downfield threat here. And kind of let's see what we can get from T. Higgins when his back's kind of up against the wall, too. Because if there's another thing, too, that you have to look at, if you look at the 2025 free agent class, I know we were jumping ahead here, that thing is loaded with guys. Higgins, maybe CeeDee Lamb if they can't work out the contract extension, Keenan Allen, Chris Godwin, that's going to be a loaded free agent class. You really got to kind of stand out and have that stellar season if you want people looking your way when it comes time to sign that contract. So I like the move by the Bengals. Maybe had some people scratching their heads, but quite frankly, Higgins has really been on the downturn here since past couple seasons. I'd love to see what he can do on that 1-year deal, because who do we keep talking about that could have a monster year? Stephon Diggs was on that 1-year deal with the Houston Texans, kind of, prove it deal after having a couple down years with Buffalo. So like the move. If it doesn't work out, then they're free of him. If it does work out, then they're going to pay the man. But I think that paying him now with a multi-year deal, I think would have been the wrong move.
Yeah, I think gone are the days, like you mentioned, of us just saying, well, the Bengals, they have 2 number 1 receivers, when in actuality, it's always been a healthy gap between Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. And you're right, that motivating factor of having that potential payday on the other side could certainly give you the best of T. Higgins. But I just wonder for this Bengals offense, like you said, the other idea, we've seen so many wide receivers, still veteran wide receivers, getting paid in this market. I'm waiting for the dearth of talent that seems to keep coming out of the college ranks that I'm sure the Bengals have as the weapon on their side too. Hey, like you mentioned, we've got guys we've already drafted. Every year we seem to get more and more pro-ready guys at that position. I do wonder when that's going to catch up to the wide receiver veteran market that we've still seen based on this last offseason is incredibly robust. And if T. Higgins does go and pop, he's a guy that had a 1 next to his name coming out of the draft already. And if he can pair this and leave everyone with a good taste in their mouth, there is still clearly plenty of money out there for that position in the veteran market, despite the fact that we've got so many great young guys at that spot. Speaking of great wide receivers, before we transition off this, we didn't get to talk as much in the last segment about Justin Jefferson and some of the reasons why you've got him down all the way at 5 on your list of top wide receivers heading into this fantasy season.
Yeah, I mean, we don't really know what's going to come out of the Vikings offense this year because of the question mark at quarterback. But it really comes down to Sam Darnold is the most likely going to be your starter, especially on week 1. They're going to use, JJ McCarthy when the Vikings eventually run out of contention here. It's not like the talent isn't there for Justin Jefferson, but it's just that what's the quarterback play going to be like? There's nobody on that offense that's going to disrupt the target share that Jefferson will receive, especially when you consider that, TJ Hawkinson may not be ready when week 1 rolls around because of all the knee injuries that he's dealing with there. And then who's after him? Trent Sherfield, I think was their big offseason acquisition at this point. Jefferson has nothing to worry about last year, but even in a quote unquote down year for Justin Jefferson last year, still had over 1,000 receiving yards on 68 catches. The talent is going to be there, but when you put him, right next to the other guys that we talked to, like Amon-Ra St. Brown, Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb, Jefferson is a really, really incredible talent, but he still needs that first part there from the guy who's throwing from him. So with Darnold there, a lot of question marks. Don't know how I feel about him at all. I think you really realistically have to move Jefferson down to that 5 spot because he's still going to produce, but he needs that guy to throw to him efficiently. And I don't know if Darnold's going to be that guy.
Yeah, it feels more and more like the contract Justin Jefferson got, which richly deserved. Clearly been the best at his position and what he does for a while. Feels like some of it is going to be hazard pay for having to deal with the growing pains of a rookie quarterback situation and the change going on there. Need the guy to get you through it. And so let's keep him happy in the meantime. And so far, so good on that front. Like you said, still managing to make chicken salad out of chicken you-know-what for most of last season. Steve, in addition to covering the NFL, we know you cover a lot of Major League Baseball for us as well. And I did want to give you the floor because we've had the wide range of opinions this morning, from relative apathy from me and Jesse towards what we saw last night in the Home Run Derby to Tim Kurkjian, whose joy is the nation's joy, who loves everything that has to do with Major League Baseball and enjoyed the Home Run Derby last night. You had the Derby last night. Go out there and get the Teoscar Hernandez win. Overall, especially with some of the tweaks, what did you think of last night's Home Run Derby?
I was very excited for the change in format. I said, I like this. We're not going to do the first round knockouts. We're going to do how many home runs everybody hits. And I was just sitting there and I'm watching it and I got a smile on my face and the smile just continued to diminish. And I'm like, this actually kind of sucks. I don't like this at all. It got really boring really fast. And I was like, I was so excited for this because, I mean, I love baseball. You know, Tim Kurkjian's a big baseball guy, loves everything. I'll just be honest with you. Like, I thought it was terrible. It was like that meme of the horse where it was like it was drawn by a 3-year-old. And then at the very end, it was the stallion because the final round was fantastic. That was awesome. Like, that really gripped me in. But like, somebody had to like give me a shot with one of those like heart machines to wake me up and get to the final round because of how bad it was. Like, I don't know what it is. Like, you got to keep the home run derby because of all the skill, like all-star games that we have. I still think that's the best one, but that just goes to show how low the bar is at this point, because I always look forward to the home run derby and about, very short after it starts, I go, why do I like this so much? It gets so boring so fast. So I was really hoping that the new format would like bring some energy and excitement to it. But quite frankly, it was like, this is just, just a typical home run derby. Like, I appreciate them, changing up the format, but like, it was not fun at all, except that final really 10 minutes between Teoscar Hernandez and Bobby Witt Jr.
Highlight of the night for you was the anthem, probably, right?
Jesse, I was in the kitchen making some exquisite nachos for the home run derby because, like I said, I was all excited for it. And I heard that going on, and I had to stop what I was doing. Like, I stopped what I was doing, and I walked in, and I peeked around the corner, and I'm like, what is this? I thought it was a joke. Like, I thought like something else was on. Like, one of the kids came in, changed the channel or something. It was horrific. And then they put the little graphic down there, like 4-time Grammy nominee. What? 4-time Grammy nominee for what? What category was she up against? Nobody else? Because there's no other way that people were like, this is a Grammy award-winning singer. I don't know what she was trying to do. I don't know if she was nervous, but like all I know is that Fergie is off the hook. That's all I know, because when we talk about extremely bad national anthems, I don't even know her name, whatever her name was. Like, let's keep her name out. Ingrid?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Ingrid. We're all going to be talking about Ingrid when it comes to national anthems now. She is the queen of bad national anthems now.
Yeah.
There you go. You heard it first here, guys. Ingrid Andress taking the mantle for worst national anthem in modern sports history. Steve, you take the mantle for best guest we've had on the show so far today, named Steve Buchanan. Right. Thank you so much, sir. Really appreciate your time as always. We'll talk to you soon as we get closer and closer to the fall. All right, brother?
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Coming up next, our early nominee for best guest on the show, named Matt Brown. Matt Brown from the Extra Points newsletter, going to stop by and help us digest, I should say, the new EA Sports College Football 25 game next on GoJo and Golic. What's up, everybody? Hour number 2 of Gojo and Golic rolling along here. Mike Golic Jr. and Jesse Cofield. Hoping to talk to Matt Brown, college football reporter, over the Great Extra Points newsletter here in just a second about some of the other upcoming changes in the sport and, of course, the video game that rocks everyone's world. That started yesterday. The deluxe edition went out for folks that paid the upcharge like I did, like an idiot, to get that early. Everyone else going to get it Friday this week. Matt's had it the entire weekend and been playing it, so he's got plenty of great insight to help you as you get started with your dynasty, with your road to glory, with whatever you're going to take from this game. But, Jesse, we got football starting and happening all around us right now. I saw Adam Schefter tweeting that the rookies for the Bills, Bears, Chargers, Chiefs, Dolphins, Giants, Saints, and 49ers all report for training camp today in the NFL. We've got SEC Media Days going on right now in the world of college football. And I don't know if you saw this yesterday, Jesse, as SEC Media Days got kickstarted here. And we know there's a ton of new in the conference, which we'll talk to tomorrow. Andy Staples from On3 is going to join us from SEC Media Day, as we've got Texas and Oklahoma making the jump in here this year. You've got Alabama with the coaching change going on right now, and that was the center of the story yesterday happening at Media Days. Nick Saban, now an SEC Network and ESPN analyst, a part of College Game Day this fall, is getting used to his new role as a member of the media. And the story went viral yesterday that Nick Saban was turned away at the start of SEC Media Day for not having his credential heading into the festivities there. He said in all the years he was coming out there, he never really needed a credential. Everyone knows who Nick Saban was. And spoiler alert, people still know who Nick Saban is, but they went and tracked down the security guard, or in this case, guards, that were a part of Nick Saban being turned away, and actually found an interesting story. Keontae Griffin was working SEC Media Days as a security guard. He was a former 4-star recruit. Now, wasn't recruited by Nick Saban, but a former college football player that ends up, him and his grandma were working security at the gate there. And the truth of the story is more that Nick Saban knew that he didn't have his credential and said, "Oh, I'll go back up to my room and get it." Keontae said he was going to let that slide, although his grandma, I guess, was playing hardball saying, "You don't got your credential. We can't let you through. Top flight security of the world, Craig." So imagine the gall, Jesse, of being the one to turn away Nick Saban after all these years at SEC Media Day.
Because Keontae wasn't about to do it. He was like, Nick Saban, face card never declines. Never declines. Face card never declines. He was going to let him walk right through. Gotta let that one slide. Everybody knows who Nick Saban is. My favorite part about the story is that his grandma was like, they said everybody needs a credential. Don't care. Don't care who you are. You don't have your credential. Head on back upstairs and grab that, which is exactly what Nick Saban did.
You know what? Nick Saban always understands, especially with all the Belichick ties. He said, everyone's got a job to do. Everyone's got a process. As early media, Nick Saban has definitely latched onto the process that took him all the way through to being the greatest college football coach of all time. The Nick Saban of newsletters, Matt Brown, joins us now here on Gojo and Golic. Matt, good morning, man. We appreciate the time. How are you?
I've never worn
thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
It's
always interesting for me to listen to this kind of stories because, I did used to work for a media company that maybe some people have heard of, SB Nation, where maybe not every media executive had heard of Nick Saban, right? So it's, maybe there's at least one other person who didn't recognize him.
That is true. We always have to account for the outliers, even in places that absolutely should have a better idea of those situations. So SEC Media Day gaffes aside, Matt, I know for you, over the last, it feels like years now, the run-up to the release of this video game has been the thing that has dominated the lives and fascination of many. For you, I know you can't go a day and haven't gone a day without getting questions lobbed your way about this. So first and foremost, now that EA Sports College Football 25 has been released, has there been like a cathartic release? Have you allowed yourself a moment to weep now that it's finally here and all the speculation questions are done for you?
Oh, well, I wish the questions were done, but I think, I've been on the air here for maybe 90 seconds. I'm sure I've gotten at least one in my DMs about uniform patches or updates or something, but I don't mind admitting this. It was a surprisingly emotional moment for me when I fired up the game on Friday. And a big part of that isn't just because of the nostalgia and because I'm excited to play this game just as much as you and as much as almost any other consumer. But you're right. I've been covering this story relentlessly for the past 3 years. It's been a major thing that has defined my newsletter and exposed it to the world because most of the people I write to are like athletic directors and conference commissioners. I typically write a business and policy newsletter. I'm wearing a FOIA shirt right now, right? I'm not a games journalist, but this is the kind of thing that reaches this broad audience. And so, okay, this is this moment now when you're right. It feels like you finally get to the end of the journey. You fire up the credits. My name is in there. Like it was special to finally get on the sticks and see this thing. And as a game, it's definitely something that is going to live up to the hype and make a lot of people very excited.
So I know you wrote yesterday because you've had the game, as you mentioned, over the weekend. Everyone who bought the deluxe edition just got it on Monday yesterday. The rest of the nation will get it on Friday. What's been your biggest takeaway so far from getting to spend some time playing this game finally?
I mean, just from a gameplay perspective, and I don't think this is just because I'm a washed dad who's not very good at video games. This game is harder. It's harder than NCAA 14, right? If you are playing with muscle memory, if you are used to just sprinting the quarterback out wide and rush, running hospital ball slants 60 times a game and not having to think about it too hard, you will get destroyed by UTEP in week 2 if you try to do that here, even on a lower difficulty level. I found myself throwing a lot of interceptions. I found myself getting off schedule on offense, and I struggled to play defense. Like I think I shared a couple of screen caps. The first game that I played was like a 5-minute quarter game with Ohio State at BYU. I went to Ohio State, and I gave up 50 points to what I don't think is going to be a very good offense this year because I did not know how to tackle in space. You'll get better, but I want to frame that expectation for people who are waiting until Friday to play this game. Like, do not be shocked if you can't do the things that your thumbs and your brain think that you should be able to do without a little bit of practice.
Yeah, I definitely ran into that yesterday, or I should say, to your point about defense, ran away from that yesterday, started basically just simming defense for the other side and heading back over to offense as I try and build the UTSA Roadrunners up into a powerhouse, got humbled mightily by Texas in week 2 for all the same reasons that you mentioned. So people are going to struggle out of the gate with this. Is there any advice on how to try and get better faster at this game outside of maybe just rushing right to dynasty mode and trying to build this up the way that we've all been used to?
Yeah, the actual initial advice that I have, which I know can be controversial on Reddit or on some parts of the internet, is actually to, I think, spend the first hour or two in Ultimate Team. And I'm not saying that because I'm trying to get you to buy packs or to go play online or to do the microtransaction stuff that EA might want. I'm suggesting it because there's a bunch of very short challenges that are all specific to different playbooks. So if you want a chance to really kind of get a feel for how the veer and shoot and the run and shoot and the power spread and the pistol feel different schematically, if you can get a little bit of better idea about how to follow, blocking assignments and how to actually hit a hole where maybe you didn't really have to do that as much on the Xbox 360, I think that's a good way to do it. And then the games are going to be over in 5 minutes, 4 minutes, right? So you can kind of cycle through the things a little bit more, particularly when trying to run the option. I found that practice to be really useful because the pitching mechanic and the ball handing off mechanic are flipped. So I found myself making the wrong reads a lot until I could kind of retrain my muscle memory.
Yeah, the muscle memory thing is definitely real. I have a lot of the wrong people have gotten the ball so far in the games that I have played, but definitely going to be sprinting to the ultimate mode practice now. I do think that's incredible advice. I think the other part of this, Matt, that's been really interesting for a lot of people, and one of the biggest reviews I've seen from other folks like you that have played the game that got the early look at it, was how much this does seem to be a love letter to true fans of the sport. I have only played so many of the stadiums and so many of the environments there, but from what you've seen, some of the finer notes that really make the sport that we watch in real life, how have they done overall of incorporating a lot of that stuff into the game in your mind?
Yeah, I think this is the kind of thing it's probably impossible to get completely right. And there's going to be a few fan bases who have been very aggressive in my mentions and DMs and emails that feel like they didn't get all of the detail that they wanted. There's a couple of stadiums that recently did some renovations, or maybe that's not completely put in there, like at Oregon State or Texas State. And there's some licensed music that didn't get in the game. But I think very broadly speaking, whether it's a place like Notre Dame, where you could the pregame, pans to touchdown Jesus, you have the tunnel walk, you have the mascot, you see the fans sitting and standing exactly where they should be in the stadium, where that looks great. But I also, I spent a lot of time at Ohio University growing up. the Putin Stadium looks awesome. I've played some games there. A lot of the G5 stadiums look great. The mountains that you're playing at Wyoming or Utah State or BYU look excellent. And I am optimistic and confident that over the course of the next several weeks, the uniform options become expanded. And some of those stadium tweaks become expanded because those are things that are not technically enormously difficult to add. One of the fun things, I think, is when you play here and you begin to notice just little details that are possible on a PS5 that you might have missed before, right? You can see sideline reactions that are much more in depth depending on what happens on the field during the game. You can see the play cards that assistant coaches are holding up on the sidelines. You can see exactly where the opposing team's band is sitting in the stadium because those seats were scanned exactly correctly when you watch the game. For me, I think that the in-game presentation is exceptional. And you can definitely tell this is a game that was made by college football sickos, and it was made primarily for college football sickos. I think it's accessible for people that are more casual. You might have to play with the settings a little bit. You might have to turn some things down here. And I've been kind of walking through a bunch of other 40-year-olds, I think, over the last week about how to make this a little bit more accessible if you can't drop 20 hours on the first week. But the depth is really, I think, quite significant and impressive.
That is the other interesting part, is thinking about the core demographic for this game. Is this going to be for a bunch of 35 to 45-year-olds who are reliving the glory days from years past? Like, numbers-wise for this, I know Madden always is the big behemoth when it comes to sales of sports video games, but what does top-end success look like for this game? Is this something that has a chance to pop in a big way like that for this first one?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's interesting because when I would talk to developers and I would talk to some financial analysts, about a year ago about the projected sales figures for this game, the projections were actually pretty conservative. Like, we know this is going to be successful. We know it's going to be profitable. We know that unlike Madden, this is not a game that has significant international appeal. So almost all the sales are going to come from North America. And, I heard 2 million units sold would be a really big success. I think 2014 over the course of the cycle moved about 1.3, 1.4. What I've heard over the last week is now a quiet confidence that it's going to do a whole lot better than that. I want to say there were 700,000 people at peak who were playing around last night. The exact units sold that's a pretty closely guarded secret, but I've been hearing from people in Orlando that they think they could definitely beat 2. It's probably not going to beat Madden just because the NFL as a brand is so much more popular globally than college football. But you're right. It is going to pop in a big way. And it's not just the 35, 40, 42 people who have been playing since the PlayStation 2 era, PlayStation 3 era. I have this on my desk, right? I've been playing since the Sega Genesis, back when it was still, Bill Walsh college football. I've been doing this for a minute. But part of what I think makes this a fascinating story for somebody like me is how important this game is to so many people who have not played a game since Solitaire or Space Invaders or something. I've talked to a lot of 60-year-old college administrators who have no idea how to play this thing on the sticks, but they recognize this is a critical way for us to get our brand in front of a generation of people that we really struggle to reach, which would be Gen Z, because there's a population that's going to interact with college football more through a video game than they are through a broadcast. So I talked to folks at Kennesaw State and Sam Houston and some of these new schools who are like, we're going to lean into this. We're going to have our players talk about why you should start your dynasty with us. This is the best free advertising we're ever going to get because people aren't going to be watching us as much on Tuesday when we're playing Liberty. But there's people all across the country that are going to be spending time with our school right now. And our hope is that maybe we can get some of those people to open up a letter that we send them when they're in high school about maybe coming here or about reaching out to us here in a different way. That is a kind of marketing that you can't really buy through conventional terms.
It's fascinating to think about the very real ripple effects of something like this that for so many people is just going to be that source of joy and nostalgia. But you're right, does present an opportunity for a different section of the fan base now in a way that's incredibly interesting. So, Matt, it's been fascinating to watch all of the reporting and time that you've put into this. I'm glad that you get this wonderful release of the game itself. I know everyone is fired up to finally have it here this week. While I've got you here, though, I do want to migrate briefly to some of the brick and mortar points of Extra Points, which, as you mentioned, has been, and if anyone's not checking it out, if anyone hasn't gone and subscribed to this newsletter and you care at all about the business side of college athletics and a lot of the future that's become mainstream news, Matt, as we've seen court rulings and all of these legal matters become mainstays on the bottom line of SportsCenter and all these different places. Make sure you're doing that. Matt, where do we currently sit right now? We know there's been a bunch of really currently outstanding legal cases the NCAA has been battling against. We know we were close to settlement in one that could actually be settlement in about 3. So how close are we to something in the way of peace in our time on the front of the reformation of college athletics?
No, it's a great question, and I think the unfortunate answer for any administrators listening to this is I don't think we're that close to peace in our time. We may be close to a potential settlement in the House case, which will give the NCAA some measure of protection against antitrust lawsuits from one guy over 10 years. But there's still a lot of unanswered questions, not just about whether this settlement is even going to get approved by a judge, which is the probable, but certainly not the absolute most likely scenario here. But the NCAA faces legal challenges on a bunch of other fronts. They can face challenges from state courts, like we saw over eligibility restrictions, and we saw over investigating NIL. And they're facing legal challenges on the employment front. We had an initial ruling in Johnson v. NCAA last week. We wrote about it, had a law professor that studies this kind of thing publish a guest post on Extra Points this morning, which shows that actually the text of the ruling is pretty bad for the NCAA. And it's not just like super liberal judges that are really skeptical of the NCAA's arguments. It's pretty conservative ones too. And you have the NLRB that's looking at not just Dartmouth, but USC and then potentially Notre Dame over the coming months as well. So if you're the NCAA, if you're hoping for peace in your time, you're hoping for Congress, and it's not going to be this Congress, you're really hoping for the next Congress to pass antitrust exemptions, to pass rules saying that athletes can't be employees, and not to drive this into a partisan ditch. But I would say, if I'm thinking like a university president here, and not just an AD or a coach, the kind of Congress that is likely to ban athlete employment issues is the kind of Congress that's likely to create a whole bunch of other bills that a university president's probably not going to like. So it's really a more complicated bargain than it might seem on paper.
You telling me that they might have, in their desperation, turned to a group of people they don't fully understand? I, for one, am shocked to see this kind of behavior from the NCAA. Shocked, I say. Matt,
I'm same.
And you know it, again, with the FOIA shirt firmly planted on your chest. You know it far better than I and most people looking towards this. Matt, thank you so much for the time, man. Enjoy the rest of your time spent with this game and the impending college football season. I know we're all looking forward to it. Everybody, check him out on Twitter, Matt Brown, EP, and check out the Extra Points newsletter while you're at it. Matt, we appreciate the time, brother. Thanks so much.
Okay. Thank you, my friend. Be well.
See, Jesse, that is exactly the kind. I bring on guests selfishly to help out myself, and all of that advice on how to get better for the game faster is going to be what I implement for the rest of my Tuesday now.
I also love that we had a dad on being like, yeah, you got to get those hours in when you can. Like, can't just spend 20 hours in the game in its first week. But I do have a question for you, Gojo, which is you've been saying all week about how you paid for the early edition of this. How much did you have to pay for that?
It's about $30 extra for the deluxe edition that comes at the beginning. There's some other perks that you get for it, but really I think it was about access.
Okay, yeah, I was going to say, it kind of seems like a no-brainer to pay for the early access if you're into this sort of thing.
Well, I mean, I'm going to work my hardest with every financial planner in my life to make sure that this can be considered a write-off for work. I need to figure out how to get the streaming equipment in here, and all of a sudden this just ties back to the job. We've talked about it on the show. So I think this is kind of like when you talk about a business at lunch and then get to put down the corporate card. Now we just get to put this as a tax write-off, and that extra $30 vanishes into thin air for something that I need for work.
Definitely need that $30 write-off. You know, just keep those coming.
Definitely. It's all about prudent financial planning, something I am intimately familiar with. Speaking of prudent financial planning, the New York Knicks apparently just getting bargains left and right from players who want to stick around for the good vibes in 2024. Why someone else may be following the Jalen Brunson plan. We'll talk to Christian Winfield from the New York Daily News next year on Gojo and Golik. Welcome back to Gojo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Jesse Cofield here, and we've had plenty of NBA news in the last few days. Now, a lot of it is Team USA centric. Team USA had their game against Australia yesterday, and a little closer than people expected. I think a good reminder that points in the paint are something that in international basketball especially matter an awful lot. So while we were out here bombing from three early on, which was awesome, love to see it. Devin Booker leading the way points-wise there. Anthony Davis and the rest of the crew inside, I think ultimately going to be the meat and potatoes and the depth in there, I should say, with him and Bam Adebayo and others that allows Team USA to go and do their thing. Jesse, it seems like the rest of the news this offseason so far has been New York Knicks related. We talked about Jalen Brunson signing a deal that was incredibly team friendly, the extension this offseason that basically costs him, by not signing next offseason, over $100 million in potential lost earnings on this current contract. Mikal Bridges might be in line to follow suit here as the Villanova Good Vibes Knicks get ready to assemble. And then, oh, by the way, it wouldn't be a day that ends in Y if there wasn't an owner somewhere complaining loudly. But James Dolan now out here warring publicly against the NBA's new collective bargaining agreement and revenue sharing policy. So with the Knicks, as always, as the center of the universe here, it gives us a great opportunity to talk to our friend Christian Winfield. You guys can check him out as the beat writer there over at the New York Daily News covering the team. And Christian, what's it feel like, man? I mean, I'm covering the Knicks this last season, already a ton of fun watching them improve, but now you guys get to be the center of the basketball universe so far this offseason.
It's a whirlwind. Number one, $113 million for Jalen Brunson to lead the players. I don't know how many people in human history are leaving $113 million on the table. He did it. Now you shift focus to Julius Randle, who becomes extension eligible. Mikal Bridges becomes extension eligible in October. And the Knicks have an opportunity to keep this core together for as long as they would like. Now, but also we've got some other news with James Dolan having these critical remarks over the new NBA broadcast rights deal, what it means for local sports and the streaming services. For example, here, MSG is where a lot of Knicks fans will be able to watch some of these games that are not nationally televised. And Dolan is saying that this new revenue sharing plan is hurting the regional sports. It's a lot to dive into. I'm sure we'll have time to get into it all.
Well, absolutely. You know what? Let's reverse engineer it and start there, because when I initially read that report, and sometimes it's easy to get lost in a lot of minutia, it just seemed to me, Christian, as owner who has one of the prominent regional sports networks, mad that the NBA overall has recognized that they would rather shift to a streaming model here. Do I have that about right?
It's different. There's so many different layers to this, and it came out at 11 p.m. last night. One of the things that Dolan pointed out was that, last year the NBA league office took home $15 million. That's next year they'll be looking at taking home $373 million, right? That's by my math about 2,500% raise. I'd like one of those too. Can I get one? It depends on which way you look at it. Now, yeah, sure. If you just look at the top franchises over year in terms of who brings in the most basketball related income, you're looking at all the top markets, right? You're looking at San Francisco, you're looking at LA, you're looking at New York, you're looking at Philly, Miami, Chicago, all these markets, and that's part of it. But you have to look at what Mr. Dolan's criticisms are here, and they're at, the NBA is taking money and taking resources from these big market franchises and redistributing it to lesser ones. And, where no matter where you stand on that, it's what's happening right now is what it would appear. So it's difficult, but at the same time, this is what these negotiations are for. This is where they're going to bargain. We'll see what happens.
Certainly, that's the high-level stuff going on there. I want to go from the billionaire money to the millionaire money, though, because you mentioned it. Jalen Brunson, in a very public show of faith and belief in this team, does leave $113 million on the table. Now, my antennas are always up when Adrian Wojnarowski rolls out a bunch of charts in the tweets about this and all these things that show you just how altruistic this was from Jalen Brunson and his camp, staying and taking less money to allow this team more flexibility going forward. But Kurkjian, outside of this team being better, I am struggling to see where the win is in this for Jalen Brunson. Personally, it really does seem like one of the greater acts of a star player taking less for the better of the team than we've ever seen.
Yeah, we've seen Tim Duncan do something like this. We've seen Kevin Durant do something like this. I mean, we even saw LeBron take $1.3 million less in each year just for the Lakers to be able to avoid the second apron. What it tells you is, Jalen would rather sacrifice this money now for an opportunity to have this core together. For example, if Jalen were to wait until next season, right, and Julius Randle is in the same bucket, Jalen Brunson could get something like 5 years, $269 million. Julius Randle would be in line for a deal, something along the lines of 5 years, $315 million. And now you're looking at that second apron, and we've seen this word go around. Second apron. What exactly is it? It freezes your assets. If you're a team that's above that second apron, your draft pick 7 years from the year after you pass that second apron, frozen. Eventually, you're not going to be able to trade it. Then you're not going to be able to use it. It gets moved to the last pick of the first round. And that's just the beginning, right? You got teams that can't send out more cap space, teams that can't put players together in a trade when you're trying to make a deal. It's just a lot of roster building ramifications and limitations that teams that pass that second apron face. Jalen Brunson made the decision, hey, I'm going to put us in a position to not go over that second apron by signing now, even though he's leaving $113 million. And then, truth be told, he can hit unrestricted free agency 3 years after that extension and really secure a significant bag. So he makes some of it up on the back end, but he has to get there, which is the iffy part for him. Now it's Julius Randle's turn, right? Is he going to accept less money? Is he going to wait until next year? And then Mikal Bridges becomes eligible to sign a 2-year extension. He has 2 years guarantee left on his deal. It's extension era right now in New York. So we'll see if everyone follows Jalen Brunson's suit, which is to leave some money on the table to give the Knicks flexibility, or you got to secure the bag. Some guys might prioritize that money now because you just don't know if that money is coming later in your career.
And no one could blame them, certainly, for doing that. It's what makes this Jalen Brunson move so surprising, is we really saw this contract that had already aged incredibly well for the New York Knicks turn into one of the best bargains of all time with a superstar that they've now developed on this team that got so far in this playoff run, that has been so good now with that combination of Brunson and Thibs at the helm. Overall, Kurkjian, when you look at this Knicks offseason where they lose Isaiah Hartenstein to the Oklahoma City Thunder, who get a great need for that team met, how would you grade what the Knicks have done this offseason, and do you believe it gets them that much closer to taking down the Boston Celtics in the Eastern Conference right now?
Well, the biggest move for this team was retaining OG Anunoby, right? The fact that you were able to do that, that puts you in a position to have a defensive stopper, number one, on the wing, no matter who you play. So the fact that you were able to do that, even though it cost you 5 years, $212 million, crisis averted, because if you lose him, even if you bring in Mikal Bridges, it is still a hole at that wing spot for someone who can stop someone like Jason Tatum or some of these elite wings, right? OG Anunoby can do that, and Mikal Bridges can do that in spurts. Now you got two dominant wings that you can build it around, right? You got Jalen Brunson, you got Julius Randle. The issue now here, as you hit it on the head, you don't have a backup center. And we thought they were going to go out there and address that earlier. Now a lot of the chips are off the table because you can't really get somebody this late in free agency that's going to make an impact more than likely. And now if you're telling me that you need to trade for somebody on another team, well, you're going to have to give up somebody, right? So that's what you're looking at with this team. You got a lot of depth. You got Dante DiVincenzo and Josh Hart, who are starting a lot of games, coming off the bench for you now because you got Mikal Bridges. It's just a matter of who's going to fill in that backup center spot. And eventually we know the chemistry is going to hit. These are guys that played either in the playoffs together last year or guys who played at Villanova and won a championship together, right? So eventually that's going to hit. It's just a matter of plugging the hole at the backup five.
Yeah, we've talked so much about team building in the modern NBA, going from these microwave big threes to now teams that have all across the NBA, a lot of the successful ones, dedicated themselves to homegrown rosters, or in this case, dedicated themselves to just finding a bunch of guys that all went to the same college, had high-end success, and seemed to get along really well. The Good Vibes Knicks seem like they're going to be a ball to follow this year, and I'm sure to cover. Make sure you guys check out Kurkjian and all the great work he's doing covering the Knicks over at the New York Daily News. Kurkjian, appreciate the time as always, brother. We'll talk to you soon, all right?
Thanks for having me anytime.
It really is. Jesse, I know, and you've got the podcast already. I think the Roommates podcast that a couple of those guys, Josh Hart and company from this team do. I need to see like a New Heights style jump for them this year because this team seems like it's just going to be following a bunch of guys that really are friends in real life around watching them play basketball.
They have an incredible opportunity here. So that would be incredible just to see all of them sitting around together, shooting the breeze, playing video games, hanging out, crushing it on the court rather. Can't wait.
I can't wait to see their Dynasty League. Coming up next, though, an important admission from a big-time NBA star next here on Gojo and Golic.
Welcome back to Gojo and Golic. Jesse Cofield, Mike Golic Jr. All right, Jaylen Brown, he was courtside at the Celtics-Lakers Summer League game. And you don't need to be a lip-reading expert to see what he said. He said, Bronny's not a pro. And then, obviously this video took the internet by storm. He responded to the video this morning, but he did not deny it. He said, it's a flex to have your son alongside you in the NBA. It reflects greatness and longevity. Bronny has all the tools around him to be successful. I look forward to watching his growth. So now let's bring in our pro, Julian Edlow, to talk about this. Jules, not a denial from Jaylen Brown, but you can't really deny it because it's very clear what he said.
Very clear what he said. You watch those videos and you can always just, in the back of your mind, at least say, well, maybe that's not what they said. But then when Jaylen Brown comes in and quote tweets it and essentially acknowledges it without necessarily, he didn't say I said that, but the way that he put it, he knows he got caught. So the thing is, it's hard to disagree with him. Bronny James has arguably been one of the worst players at Summer League. He's not playing well. He's 0 for 14 from downtown. And he's barely scoring the ball. So from what we've seen so far, Jaylen Brown, not too bad with his GM hat on.
Oh. Yeah, nope, not too bad with his GM hat on. Certainly still licking some wounds for not being named as the replacement for Kawhi Leonard in Team USA basketball, and maybe after this LeBron James shutting the door on that fully as he sits over there with Team USA now, just in case anyone got froggy or got any feelings about anything else. But yeah, it's been a struggle for Bronny so far. We know he's going to come in with this bullseye on his back right now, and we also know that at this point, while he was a much talked about move for the Lakers this offseason, Julian, it was not going to be a move that actually had any sort of indication on the Lakers win or loss total whatsoever right now, or any sort of effect on that. We do, however, have the win-loss totals that just went up yesterday on DraftKings Sportsbook that everyone can check out for the NBA right now. The first to have that up, and exciting to already think about this upcoming season with the last one in the rear view. And while so much of the focus is on Team USA basketball right now, I know you've already been looking ahead at some of the win totals that you like for this season. So now that we've got the board up here, Julian, what are some of the teams that you look at win total wise and think people could find some wins with?
I think the first couple that are interesting to look at all connect with Paul George and him being on the move from the Clippers to the Sixers. That's been, one of the bigger moves in terms of affecting win totals. And we've got Philly there at 51.5. They went 47-35 last year. Embiid was dinged up. So they're saying Embiid's going to play, both stay healthy, and Paul George is going to help that team win games. And then you have the Clippers, who essentially you're saying yes, no 500 team. They're only 41.5 now with Paul George gone. And that's a team that was in the mix for the 1 seed down the wire in the West. They obviously didn't get there. They came undone down the stretch, but they went 51-31. So that's a significant drop off. I actually like the under on both of these teams involved in the Paul George move. Philly can't. If I like what Philly's reinforcing themselves. They're making sure that they're not going to kind of trend in the wrong direction like they did last year, where they had to play in the play-in. But I don't know if getting Paul George is just necessarily going to boost them that much. They need to play for the postseason. That's been made clear once again this year with Embiid getting dinged up. They need to put him in bubble wrap and sit him out as many games as possible this regular season. Then you have the narrative where we always see these stars go to a new team and say, oh, they're going to be so good. And then they start the season like 500 around Christmas because they're still figuring it out. I just think they have to figure it out with Paul George. Embiid can't play that many minutes, and we're seeing a boost in the win total here. I'll go under there. And then from a Clippers standpoint, you lose Paul George. Kawhi Leonard, when is he going to be out there? James Harden's going to be leading the way. Russell Westbrook, that maybe works 10 years ago. I don't know about now. I think the Clippers are going to be battling to be one of those play-in teams. So those are the first two that jumped out to me. Unders on both of the teams involved in that Paul George move.
Yeah, I think the Clippers one, not overly surprising for the reasons you mentioned. I mean, having to send Kawhi Leonard home from Team USA because they're really trying to make sure that he's in gear by this fall for a guy who struggled to have that side of his game dialed in for a while. Huge red flags going off for this Clippers team that's getting ready to break in a new arena. But the 76ers are interesting to me, Julian, for what you mentioned. I think they fall into that category of teams that is so postseason oriented that you do wonder how much they're going to be trying to go and challenge at the top end, how much being up near the top, or even being how realistic contending for the 1 seed in the Eastern Conference is with Boston right now, versus saying, hey, let's just make sure we get into the dance somewhere along the way on this. And I do think the other factor in that too is the rest of the Eastern Conference. We've seen the strides that the Knicks have made. We've seen the strides that teams like the Orlando Magic, certainly the Indiana Pacers this last year. I'm wondering, in your standpoint too, the Milwaukee Bucks and their win total heading into this season, up 2.5 from last year. There's at 51.5 after winning 49 games last year in that year one transition phase. I don't think we can undersell that for the 76ers. There always seems to be, no matter the level of star, onboarding for a player of that caliber coming over and joining a team. We saw Milwaukee deal with that last year with Dame Lillard in year one, the coaching change with Adrian Griffin, all the things that went up, and they were still a team that won 49 games last year. So I'm curious from your standpoint how you view the Milwaukee Bucks maybe getting through that onboarding phase and having a better shot this year with all the talent on that roster if they can stay healthy.
Yeah, ultimately, I agree with your point that they should have a better shot. Like the injuries you would think are not going to be there in the postseason, and I think that they have a postseason run in them. As it goes to the win total, there's a reason I'm not betting it. It's because I'm not confident on it. I think I would lean over that they can get a few more wins here because things went so haywire last year and really came undone at points of the regular season. We saw, like, we're talking about that transition phase with a Paul George, and you're talking about how the Bucks have to work Lillard in last year. It actually wasn't that big of an issue for them. They were doing really well when they fired Adrian Griffin and kind of took a step back in the regular season with Doc Rivers. So they kind of had it down last year, and then the wheels just blew off with Doc Rivers coming in and some injuries as they got to the postseason. So this is a team, though, that with over the last couple of years, bounced in a 1-8 matchup against the Heat with with Giannis in there. And then you come back, add a Damian Lillard, get worse throughout the course of the season. Everybody gets hurt and you get bounced in the first round again. So this is a team, unlike the Sixers, that I think do have a little bit to prove almost in the regular season, that they aren't this team that's got back-to-back first-round exits. So they are a team that I could see, even in a tough Eastern Conference, coming out with a little bit to prove. So I'm probably not gonna come around on actually putting some money on Milwaukee. But if you said here's $100, you have to bet the Bucks win total one way or another, I would go with the over.
Certainly going to be one of the more polarizing and interesting teams heading into this fall. We got about a minute left here, Jules. I see you like the under on the Nuggets. Have we already seen the best of the core of this roster, as you're saying there?
Yeah, it's slowly coming undone a little bit over the last couple years, and they should have been in the Western Conference Final last year. You're up 20 in the third quarter at home in a Game 7. You should close that out, but they've been losing pieces slowly. You lose the Bruce Browns off of a championship team, and now you make a second round exit that's pretty surprising, and you lose a Kentavious Caldwell Pope, which is he's a guy that plays 40 minutes for them. He is a 3-and-D guy that really helps you in the modern NBA. And now you're going to have to find out how to replace that. And Bruce Brown, the previous loss, is like the type of player you would want for that. So they're going to plug in Christian Brown, who was really good and a good spark plug from Kansas. But they're slowly losing all those role pieces that eventually I think is going to matter. So I would look under on Denver, especially with the way that the West is shaping up on the top. I think it's going to be really tough for them. And I mentioned KCP. I'll just go to a team that I do like really quickly. He went to Orlando. That's the type of piece they do need. Orlando won 47 games last year. Their win total's 47.5 this year. Young core, they should only be improving, and they get a good vet that can really help them do that.
At Julian Edlow on Twitter, where you can get more of this, our DraftKings sports betting analyst. Appreciate the time, brother.
Anytime. Thanks for having me, guys.
right, everybody, time to finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, the third, 3 quick stories to send you into the rest of the day. Make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review our show. Leave us a 5-star rating and check us out here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. If you miss us there, the best of GoJo and Golic's available wherever you get VSiN on the radio, noon to 1 p.m. Eastern. And if you miss us there or any of our great guests, and we had a lot of them today, shout out to our guys here at DraftKings, Julian Edlow and Steve Buchanan, who stopped by to help us look at the wide receiver market for best ball coming up. Julian Edlow gave us a look at the early board for NBA win totals that are out on DraftKings Sportsbook right now. And then, of course, our friend Tim Kurkjian, ESPN Major League Baseball analyst, Matt Brown of the Extra Points newsletter breaking down the EA Sports college football video game, and Christian Winfield, Knicks writer at the New York Daily News, for coming through to talk about all things Knicks offseason. You can catch all of those interviews if you missed them wherever you get your podcast or right here as soon as we get done on the DraftKings YouTube channel. All right, Jesse, let's finish this thing off with manna from heaven. Yesterday, I'm sitting around, and one of the beautiful places about being around and on the internet on Twitter, and there are very few good things about that left, being around there as long as I have, you become known for a few things. And so when certain things pop up, you don't have to go looking for them. People will run to you, tag you in them, and get you ready to go. And one thing I got tagged in multiple times yesterday was this post from Awful announcing that Paramount Pictures is working on a comedy film documenting an offensive lineman turned male model this upcoming year. This film, tentatively titled Thick with 2 C's, brings me more joy than most things. It's based on the Matthew Schneider 2019 New York Magazine article titled At the Russian Baths with the Big Boys of Brawn. It was a piece talking about IMG Model's Brawn male plus size division that had several former players in it, including NFL center John Toth. The description for the film, Jesse, is incredible. The film follows an offensive lineman who, after seeing a career-ending injury cut his professional dreams short in football, finds unexpected fame and fortune in the world of brawny male modeling. I remember reading that Schneider article back in 2019, but for some reason the term brawny male modeling didn't stick until right now. So, Jesse, I don't know what I need to do to get some sort of bit part in this movie, but we've got to go to work on that now because my life has never needed anything more than it needs a credit somewhere in the movie Thick.
At the Russian Baths with the Big Boys of Brawn sounds like Lana Del Rey's new album title, but it just it's just a Lana Del Rey single. My question is this: does IMG still have this division? And if they do, I mean, can we submit some photos for you, Gojo? Like you could get signed by IMG and be a male model.
I'll do partial nudes. No one's asking, but I'll do it. I mean, if that's
no
what
one's asking, Gojo's offering.
Yes, what I'm trying to say is full frontal probably not going to be my thing, but I can do some partial tasteful nudes for the adult underwear division that you've got going on. So that's going to be, I'd say, the side quest on this. But my main goal, and we're going to find out everyone associated with this movie and try and get there before they figure out that Jason Kelce is a thing. Because once they find Jason Kelce, that's going to render me pretty useless in this process. So I don't even need a speaking role. I just want to be in the background somewhere being like thick male model 3 in the background of some scene where someone gets coffee spilled on them and you have the meet cute with what I'm sure is going to be a love interest in this. Because if it's going to be a comedy surrounding big guys, it's got to have some tinge of romance in it, kind of like an ode to Chris Farley, where it's a female lead that would be far outside of his reach in normal circumstances.
Yeah, I was going to say like a
check
Sports Illustrated swimsuit model. Got it.
100%. Yeah. So let's make that happen here. Speaking of people's hopes and dreams and love interest, Jesse, let's get to that here. Angel Reese dashing dreams and crushing my favorite meme format of the year so far.
Yeah. So the whole thing that's been like taking over the internet is guys trying to be the first gentleman to get flown out to a WNBA game. Okay. So this is a thing. Like guys will fly girls out to go see them play. It's a fly me out. It's a whole thing. And Angel Reese, she's tired of hearing people ask her to do this. Take a listen.
Let me just say something. I just want to say one thing. The delusion of y'all thinking I'm finna fly any of y'all out. Yeah, that's all I'm gonna say. Yeah, like the delusion to think any one of us are flying y'all out. Be for real. Thank you.
So an absolutely hysterical response by Angel Reese, and even funnier is that now in the replies to this, everyone's just being like, it's giving broke. We get it. You guys are not flying a dude out. It's giving broke, which is just another hilarious take on this whole thing. Love Angel Reese and love her response, putting the sunglasses on and being like, the delusion. Don't even think about it. She's tired of it.
It was my favorite meme of 2024 so far, is watching around the success of the women's tournament, March Madness, heading into the WNBA draft that had all these star names that include Angel Reese, watching guys completely lose their cool in a way that seemed more fun and less creepy. It was kind of
Definitely
taking
more
shots
fun
at themselves and doing it in a way that wasn't weird and gross. You know what? It's nice to see, and I enjoyed anytime we saw the acknowledgement from WNBA players that this was going on. And it happened with more than a few, but Angel Reese now putting it on wax. So fellas out there, stay out of the DMs, stay out of the mentions. Angel Reese is closing the doors there. You are not going to get chose, at least not around the Chicago Sky team. You're going to have to go wander elsewhere and try and make that happen here. Jesse, let's get to the third. We talked before, Bronny James not having the best time in Summer League on the court right now, but that has not stopped him from becoming a champion off the court out in Vegas.
Yeah, Julian Edlow, I think he said arguably the worst player at Summer League for Bronny. Okay, Jules, but guess where he's the best? In these, in the video game streets? I don't know. He won the Call of Duty Summer League tournament. And he made 10K. Not that Bronny James needs 10K, but he's adding to the Lakers trophy case, right? His play on the court might not be much to write home about, but his play in Call of Duty, look at this man. He won. He's got the belt. He's got 10K. Good for him. You know, I'm not sure if this helps or hurts him right now. People are like, all right, just stay playing video games.
Yeah, it's one of those things that feels good in the moment, and then looking back later, especially if things career-wise don't take off, it's going to be one of those things they lob back in your face. It's easy meme material, but this is something that he's loved. I remember when LeBron James came out the other day and talked about how Bronny, you know, his upbringing was so different than LeBron's, how LeBron needed to make it out to feed his family, to get everyone out of the situation that they were in. He said Bronny grew up with whatever he wants. It could be doing anything he wants. And one of the things LeBron mentioned was streaming and playing video games. This, for a lot of young athletes, has become a side quest and a side career. Plenty of these guys stream playing these games online, and Call of Duty seems to be the one. Now, I had my brief flirtations with it when I was in college and haven't gone back to the stuff since. I've got friends that work on making the game that do a phenomenal job of this, and everyone should go and check it out. But being that good, I mean, we've seen every time you have an NFL draft, an NBA draft, something like that, an activation like this migrates its way over. So part of me says, if there is a competition around to be had, Jesse, and you've got the opportunity to dominate it, being the best is a lifestyle. And so Bronny is at least showing you championship DNA still living in there.
Yeah, he's just making LeBron proud, right? He's going out there, he's winning this Call of Duty tournament. LeBron said he can be anything he wants, and if he wants, remember LeBron said if he wants to step away from basketball, like that's on him, he can do whatever he wants. All right, Bronny's setting it up here. He can step away and just become a streamer.
I want this. They showed LeBron James when he was at Team USA camp, that video of Bronny scoring his first bucket in Summer League a couple weeks ago. I need someone to dub that over the top with like the picture-in-picture of LeBron watching it, but it's the video of Bronny winning 10K at the Call of Duty Summer League tournament and making $10,000. Upon that rock, we will build our church there. So congratulations to Bronny James Jr. on his $10,000. Congratulations to all you guys for making it through a show with just me and Jesse here. If you enjoyed that show and all of the fun guests that we had along the way, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review us. Leave us a 5-star rating and check us out here live from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern every day. Thank y'all so much. Enjoy the MLB All-Star game tonight. We'll talk to you tomorrow.